Karen, I want to welcome you here to our program. You and Gene Reed Jr., a very good friend of mine. We kind of hung out over the years, Gene and I, and played some politics in the Democrat Party when my dad was around and his father was around, and his dad was the Newcastle County Democratic chairman. So Gene and I go way back. What I'd like to do, Karen, I have some concerns that your opponent has been coming on our 28 Live Lease Access Airways, promoting his candidacy, and there's nothing wrong with that, but some of the things that are being talked about really bother me, as I have people approaching me talking about him and the TV show they saw him on. Let's go, first of all, if you will, to the issue of workman's comp. Now, we discussed that on Friday, and you said that it was said, and it sounds like you are truly missing in action as it relates to that issue, and you didn't sound the alarm and alert the people and all this and that as the commissioner, and that's why your opponent should be elected. My concern there is, as we talked about that on Friday, because you were coming on with me, you shared with me some reasons why you have to do things in the manner of respect of office for which you hold oath of office, that certain things you just cannot do. Will you please just come in your own relaxed way and help our viewers to understand, one, on that issue, because all of those that approach me about him, that's the first thing they bring up, is that workman's comp. You say that there's a certain process in place, there are some things going on as it relates to the increase, and some things that you can talk about and some you can't. For those that you can talk about, help our viewers to understand just your involvement, the process as to where you are, and why there are a lot of things you cannot even discuss about it. Just come on in your own way and make yourself relax.
Okay, thank you, Herman. It's so nice to be on the show with you. I do want to point out, first of all, that I grew up here in Delaware. I lived here all my life, and I've been living in the city of Wilmington in the same house since 1978. So I am a citizen of the city of Wilmington. Workers' compensation, every year, it's an annual event, if you want to call it an event. The Rating Bureau of not only the Delaware Rating Bureau, but all the rating bureaus for workers' comp around the country bring to their various insurance commissioners their rate requests, whether it's an increase or decrease. And for the last several years, we've been in a down cycle in workers' comp. And also, I won a large judgment in the State Court of Chancery in 2009 to compress rates down in workers' comp so that many of the businesses in Delaware, actually all the businesses in Delaware, did get to experience a lower rate since I've been in office. Last year, the Rating Bureau came to us asking for a fairly high rate request. I think it was around 40, wasn't it?
Last year it was around 19.
19, I'm sorry, I really over-exaggerated that. I'm sorry, 19%. They said that there was an aberration.
Let me interrupt you a minute, because I want my viewers to understand this. This happens every year?
Every
you say
year.
Every year. This is not something that's been building for 4 years.
No.
And, okay, because okay, go ahead. I just want them to understand that.
It's
go
done,
ahead.
It's done absolutely every year. And so when we finished with our actuarial reports, because I hire outside actuaries, 2 independent actuaries, we found that there was some movement that we could make, and we moved it down to 11%. But they felt that it was an aberration, that it would be unusual to have losses that were that sizable at that time. So we did allow the 11%. Now, all the rating bureaus, not just workers' comp, there's other rating bureaus that also come through my office. So, but the one for workers' comp always comes at about the same time. I've asked them to file in August to give us time so that we can get some resolution before, because we have to have hearings. We may have to have hearings, we may have to go to court, and it really needs to be settled by December the 1st. We try to get it settled by. once they make a filing, if I just do a knee-jerk reaction and say, and turn it down or do something, then it's in stone that within 20 days I have to go to a hearing. Now, it's very complex. Any rating is very complex. Health insurance is very high in the state of Delaware. In fact, we rate the highest in the country. In fact, for every Medicare patient, Medicaid patient, we pay more per patient than any other state. So realize how high our costs are in our state to start with, let alone how small it is. So if I do a knee jerk and go, I'm turning this down, I would not have time to get the experts on hand. And this time we also got an expert attorney, which we have to put an RFP out. And when you bring in an outside attorney, the governor and our Attorney General has to sign off on it. So the Attorney General's office does the post the request for a bid for proposal, and then it takes a little time to interview and get somebody. Well, the only attorney we could find is in New York, so we hired this attorney from New York with the blessing of the governor and the Attorney General. He's just come on board. And so before we had even put out our RFP, we had to get results back from our actuaries to even show there's a justification that there may be a bigger problem that we may need an outside counsel. And I think on this particular year's filing, I'm assuming that is within my legal right to comment. Most things I cannot comment on because I would be sued.
And help them understand why, because you were very specific on that.
If I make a comment half-handedly, as I explained, if I just turned it down, I'd have to go to a hearing within 20 days flat, so I would not even be able to gather enough information to justify my denying it. So they would have their information and would probably win the hearing, which would not help the citizens of Delaware, or even have me responsibly react as the commissioner who's protecting businesses and jobs here in Delaware. The other thing is that if I perform any kind of bias attitude, one way or the other, I can be sued. And since the suit would be based on, basically it would be malicious because I would be waiving in on an insurance company's filing without any proof or documentation, and that would be considered by most courts, the way I see it, would be malicious. So therefore I would not have immunity. And as insurance commissioner, a lot of times you don't have immunity. A number of times you have to get your own attorney and pay for your own lawsuit. And I know David Levinson, when I worked at the department back in 1989 to 1993, he had to do that on a number of occasions. It's not unusual for an insurance commissioner to be sued. We are sued all the time. But whether or not we have immunity or not can be in question under certain circumstances.
Let me, thank you. I can appreciate that because I know it helps me to be able to better address the issue as I hear it now in the community, number one. And number two, I know there are a lot of our viewers sitting out there that are listening attentively because, again, the impression given is that this is something that's coming down the pike that's going to jack everybody's workman comp up outrageously high, and it's been around. This has been brewing for 3 or 4 years, and it's like, you were asleep at the switch, you sat on it, and for what you're saying, that is not the case. Gene, help us out here with whatever you might be able to help share without creating a problem for where we are with the situation in state at this moment. And what is your title working in the office?
My title is Deputy Insurance Commissioner.
Okay.
I've been with the department a little over 27 years. I was previously former Commissioner Matt Den's Consumer Protection and Enforcement Officer in charge of rates and Market Conduct Director when Karen, as you know, Karen and I ran against each other in a primary. And she put me in as deputy in 2010, which I think speaks volumes of Karen.
And he gets paid more than I do.
Okay. Obama and Hillary Clinton in reverse.
Anyway, I think for your viewers' sake, what's important is to know the timetables, the timelines. And those timelines are, yes, every year the Delaware Compensation and Rating Bureau has to make a filing. This year, they made it on August 14th. When we received that filing, Commissioner Stewart had two independent actuarial firms.
August 14th of this year?
Yes, August.
This just came up.
Just came up.
Thank you.
August 14th, they made the filing. On August 14th, when we received that filing, Commissioner Stewart then shipped that filing to two independent actuarial firms to review. Those two independent actuarial firms reviewed that and came back with their reports in late September. I think we received it September 27th or the 28th. Then the department has to analyze those two independent reports. When we got those reports back, while we were glad to see that it had cut the DCRB proposed rate in half, we still weren't happy with that. We thought there was an anomaly happening. Something was going wrong in the DCRB's methodology, or something was going wrong with the data that the companies were giving to the DCRB and that the DCRB was giving to our actuaries. So we were relying strictly on the data given to us from insurance companies. We don't want to go that route. So Karen hired an outside expert on workers' comp bureaus to also look at our actuarial reports as well as the DCRB's filing. We are also examining. We need to go in and do an examination of the insurance company's data that they gave to the DCRB, the Delaware Compensation and Rating Bureau. The reason we'd go in is that we want to make sure whether or not the data that the insurance companies are given to the Delaware Compensation and Rating Bureau is accurate and correct. So we have that in front of us as well. Now, Karen is correct that as the final arbiter in this case, she is not to comment on this. But I can comment on this without any prejudice to the Commissioner being here tonight. My concern is that her opponent is running around as if the Delaware Insurance Department is just going to carte blanche approve the Delaware Compensation Rate Bureau's rate filing.